Hey there, everybody. It's Caitlin, your geeky girlfriend, and we are going to do something super fun in tonight's video. First of all, before we begin, I would like to welcome you all back to my channel. This is my Real Talk channel, or series, I guess, in the channel, and we are going to talk about some movies tonight. So if you are new here, make sure you like this video and hit that red button to subscribe. Thank you all so much who have subscribed over the past few months. This little page is continuously growing, and I'm so excited about that. So tonight we're going to film a video that I've talked about here on the channel for a long time, and that is my mid-year movie review video. So in this video, I'm going to review every movie that I have watched within the past year. Not even year. It's going to be about the past 8 months or so, because as of next Saturday, we are officially halfway through 2024. And I did a movie review kind of quick fire, video in late December, maybe even early January, of all the movies that I watched in 2023. So we're going to do a mid-year video and kind of review things that I have watched since that last video. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting off with War of the Planet of the Apes. So first of all, actually, let's go back. So I want to talk about first the scale. So you can see some of the slides there off to the left. Anything that is a 1 to a 3 was given a red score. Is think of the really, really rotten tomatoes type of a thing. So anything that fell below a 3 or lower got a red. And then I also gave it a score out of 10. Anything that was a 4, 5, or 6 out of 10 score was put in that yellow bracket, that very average, just okay type of a bracket. And then for our 7, 8, 9, they got the green score, background, green tier, whatever you want to say. And those were the movies that, when describing that movie, I would say it was a good movie, and I would maybe recommend it to other people. So the difference there is that the green movies are going to be movies that I actually say are good, and if I say a movie is, it was all right, or it was just okay, those are your yellow tier movies. And then the red are I did not like this movie at all. I would not watch this movie again. And there are some movies in this list that have some asterisks and things like that, and we'll get into that. But if you see a blue movie, these are those 10 out of 10, would definitely recommend these movies. So now let's get into it. War of the Planet of the Apes. I don't exactly remember when I watched this. I want to say it was maybe around Christmas time, Christmas break-ish, when we finally rewatched the Planet of the Apes series. These are obviously the remakes of an original series, and these ones star Andy Serkis as Caesar, and that is Caesar in the main poster there. And if you know anything about this series, I did do a review of the Rise and Dawn in my last movie review video, so make sure you go check that out. But this is the third installment in the new series of Planet of the Apes, and it, I think, was intended to be the last one, but now they have recently, just in the last couple of weeks, released the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And without to spoil, we're not going to spoil any plots in these reviews. We're just giving a very basic, bare bones, should you see this movie or not, and maybe some things that you might like or dislike about it. So some things to like about the War of the Planet of the Apes. As you can see, I gave it a green score. It's a 7 out of 10. This one was better than Dawn, or whichever. I get them confused of which one is Rise and which one is Dawn, but I'm pretty sure Rise is the first one. But no, that might not be right. I think Dawn is the first one, then Rise is the second one, and then War is the third one. And this one has Woody Harrelson in it, which is a nice surprise. There are a couple of other guest appearances in this. And essentially, if you know the story of the Planet of the Apes saga, in the original, there's a virus that is grown because the Caesar, the ape, is injected with this hormone treatment to try and teach him language and build his IQ and his cognition. It's also being used to treat Alzheimer's patients, and it goes wrong. And like I said, I did review both of the first two movies in a separate video, but this one is the third one, and the humans that are still left on the planet, which ironically, we watched this movie in 2020, I think it was 2023, and we felt like when watching the second one, when the virus kind of breaks out and all, it felt very reminiscent of COVID. So it was a little bit like post-apocalyptic, kind of. And these are definitely sci-fi movies. So if that is your thing, then you might like it better than I did. But this is the third one, like I said, and the humans that are left, there are very few humans by the time this one starts, but they have figured out that the virus that made the apes smarter, if a human contracts it, it actually deteriorates their cognition and renders them unable to speak. And so that is kind of the big climactic moment. So what's interesting about these movies, and I need to move on from this movie, so we're not going to talk too much more about it. But what's interesting about these movies is they all kind of correlate back to some historical event. Like, his name is Caesar. So there is this Roman Empire kind of dynamic between him and the other apes. And then especially in this one definitely gives off like Nazi Germany concentration camp vibes. So they do have a little bit of like historical kind of relevance and just kind of, I don't want to say homage because homage typically is like a positive thing, but there are like definitely things that reminded me of different points in history. Okay, let's move on. The People We Hate at the Wedding. I mistyped the title. I thought it was called The People We Hate at Weddings. The People We Hate at the Wedding is actually the correct title. Ben Platt, Kristen Bell, and a couple of other pretty big name. I want to say it's Allison Janney is the mom. So a couple of other big name artists are in this movie. And it was interesting to see Ben Platt in a movie. He has not done a movie since the Dear Evan Hansen movie where he was reprising his role as Evan Hansen. But he has been mostly performing on Broadway and doing some solo performance stuff. So it was interesting to see him in a movie, and it was interesting to see him be openly gay in the movie. But I also really, really like Kristen Bell, and this has a nice like romantic comedy feel to it. It's kind of that jumbled up comedy story where like things all go wrong and then they kind of get put back together. I just thought it was really charming and funny and just like a nice story. So it is on Amazon Prime, and it was a Prime original movie. And it was just something kind of fun just to kill an evening. Like nothing too serious. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it does have a very nice message overall and at the end. Now let's talk about another Prime original. This is Hot Potato, The Story of the Wiggles. I was a Wiggles kid. I grew up watching the Wiggles. My sister grew up watching the Wiggles. We had soundtracks. We watched them on Disney Channel. We knew all the songs. Toot Toot Chugga Chugga Big Red Car, like Fruit Salad, the whole 9 yards. I stumbled upon this documentary on Amazon Prime as well, and this one is a 10 out of 10. If you liked the Wiggles, grew up watching the Wiggles, know the Wiggles music, I highly, highly recommend. It mostly follows Anthony, the blue Wiggle, but the other three are in there as well, and it talks a lot about Greg, the yellow Wiggle, and why he left for a while and why they kind of recast him, because that was a big era of controversy in terms of the Wiggles, was why Greg left, and there's a new yellow Wiggle, and they talk about all of that. They talk about how the Wiggles got started, and it's super cool. They're just four guys who met in elementary education classes, and they grew into this huge cultural phenomenon, and it is just a very well done documentary. I cried, and it was just so sentimental and nostalgic. I highly recommend. So it gets the blue tier, 10 out of 10. Need to watch this movie if you like the Wiggles or used to like the Wiggles. All right, next one, Warm Bodies. We have our first yellow rating here. It got a score of a 6 out of 10. I did read the book in 2023. I did a separate video on the book review, so make sure. I would recommend reading the book first. I do feel like the movie stuck pretty good to the book. There weren't any big names in this, other than I do think that John Malkovich plays the girl's dad. But other than that, Nicholas Hoult isn't a super big name. There weren't very, I think Dave Franco is in it and he plays Perry. I think somebody like that. Like, I just can't picture his face exactly. So a couple of like more known people, I think, just to get like some names in the cast list, you know what I'm saying? But I do think it stuck pretty traditionally to the book. The Bonies were represented really well, and this is like a love story set in like post-apocalyptic America where zombies rule the earth, and it has a nice, charming ending. But overall, it's like okay. It took me forever to watch it. I tried like 3 different streaming services, couldn't find it. So I had to like wait a really long time to watch this movie. And it's one of those ones that I bought super cheap, but I wish I would have just like rented it because it's probably realistically like a once or twice thing. I might watch it at Halloween just for like a fun zombie movie, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is like my favorite movie ever. Okay. Robots. This one was very shocking to me. I did not expect to like this movie. But then once we got into it and we realized who the voice cast was, we have Drew Carey, we have Ewan McGregor, we've got Stanley Tucci, we have Robin Williams, and so many more. Great voice actors in this movie. This is a Blue Sky film. They are no longer even a studio that makes movies, but they were the same ones who did Rio and Spies in Disguise and some of those other ones. And like I said, I was not sure what this movie was even going to be about. I felt like it was going to give me kind of Treasure Planet because the girl Amanda Bynes plays the yellow robot that you see with the ponytails. And that kind of gives me like Treasure Planet vibes. And then also like the Iron Giant. Like, I don't know. I just was like, robots. It's kind of over and done. I did not think that I was going to like this movie. This movie is so funny. There are so many like innuendos and adult humor that probably if I would have watched this as a kid, I probably would not have liked it as much as I did watching it as an adult. I love Robin Williams so much. Rest in peace for his soul. And I loved it even more that he was in it. And I just think the voice cast is stellar in this movie. And like there were bloopers at the end and the special features, like just a lot on the DVD that were great. And I'm glad that we own this movie. Like this was not a movie that I would have bought, but it came on like a 3, one of those like 3 movie fun packs or whatever. And this, we watched it and we were like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. Like it's going to be a movie that we watch over and over again because, so it got the 9 out of 10. I would say the only reason it didn't get the 10 out of 10 was probably just because like it was cute, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's the best movie ever. It just was cute and it's funny. It didn't like completely knock my socks off, I guess, but it was very close. Very close. Now, another 10 out of 10 movie, but I will say this one has a caveat of this one can really only be watched one time. This is a one and done, really great, really enjoyable the first time that you watch it. It is based on a true story. Matthew Modine plays the lead, and he is a doctor studying the spread of the AIDS virus in America. Phil Collins is also in it, which is fun, and so is Ewan McGregor, which is awesome, and he was just in Robots, so... Or I'm sorry, it's Ian McKellen, excuse me, Sir Ian McKellen, not Ewan McGregor. I misspoke. But this is a very, very good, very well done, historically accurate, and it's based on a true story, and you can do your research and figure out that all of this stuff actually happened. And it tells the true story of how the AIDS epidemic kind of spread in America in the 80s, and it's an 80s movie, so it was like made during that it's a late 80s, early 90s movie, so it was like made kind of during that same time. And it's just everything is it feels very real. It's very emotional, very raw, and it's just very, very good. Highly recommend, especially if you like movies based on a true story that kind of have that documentary feel but still are like theatrical movies. Definitely give this one a watch. We were able to find it on DVD. I'm not sure where you can find it on streaming platforms. Next one, Rise of the Guardians. This is a DreamWorks film. Currently, my husband and I are trying to work our way through the DreamWorks collection. This was one that we had never seen. And this is like one of my sister's favorites. She really likes it. I gave it a 6 out of 10. It hit the yellow mark for me. It has some really like deep, dark, kind of nightmare-y stuff in it, which, as an adult is kind of interesting to watch in a kid's movie. As a child, if I would have watched it, I probably would have been a little freaked out, honestly. And there are just some weird concepts. Like, I don't totally love that Hugh Jackman is the Easter Bunny. I just don't see the Easter Bunny as having an Australian accent. Chris Pine plays Jack Frost. And again, it's just not a super great, like, voice actor choice, in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm not a casting agent. I don't know. So there were just, like, little things like that. I think the story is charming. It kind of gives me, like, Santa Claus, Christmas Chronicles, that sort of a thing, but it encompasses like more than those holidays. And there are some like parts that really got to us, and we were like, oh my gosh, that's really sad. But overall, it's kind of jumbled. It kind of has they're trying to fit 4 like guardians into one movie. Jack Frost is trying to become a guardian. So it just felt a little bit jumbled to me. Maybe watching it as a kid, I would have given it a higher score. Or watching it with kids, I would have given it a higher score, but there are things that I think would be a little bit terrifying for kids. So it gets a 6 out of 10 for me. The Prince and Me. This is a movie that had been on my list for a super, super long time, like probably close to 10 years. And you can see my score there. This was a green tier for me. It got an 8 out of 10. Very charming, very cute. Also very, like, not overly cheesy, but kind of cheesy. It's like that romance that every girl dreamed of, right? You meet this guy, he ends up being a prince, you don't know it, and then next thing you know, like, you're living this royal life. It's just a really, like, charming real life fairy tale. There's a really nice scene in the rain, which I love, a super cool scene in the library, which I love, and it was nice to see these 2 adult characters. Like, they're drinking, they're in college, like, they're in grad school, so it was nice to see a romantic comedy that like wasn't about teenagers, but kind of like came out in that era of teenage rom-coms. Like, so this one got an 8 out of 10 for me. It's very charming. I have not watched the second one yet, but stay tuned because it's on the list now. Moving on, Daredevil. This is starring I don't know why I said Blake, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. And what I liked about Daredevil was the fact that Ben Affleck and Daredevil is a blind superhero, or an individual who has his vision very poorly damaged and then is able to like use rain and noises in the environment to kind of see shapes. And I thought it was very, very fascinating. And just watching a movie about a blind protagonist is awesome. I love that representation. Jennifer Garner's character is kind of meh. Colin Farrell is also in this movie. His character is meh. So, like, all of the other characters are just kind of like, eh. And it definitely is just that basic superhero movie. So, overall, it's by no means my favorite superhero movie, but I do like the concept of a blind superhero. So, it gets yellow tier, 6 out of 10. Another 6 out of 10, but for completely different reasons, is The Ides of March. So this is it's actually a political movie set in Ohio. So that's one of its perks. And this has a killer cast. So this is Ryan Gosling, Paul Giamatti, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and I think Marissa Tomei is in it. She plays the journalist. So just tons and tons of people in this movie. And this is a great movie actually for this time of year. We're getting ready to go into another election cycle, and it just kind of shows the behind the scenes of how campaigns actually work. And there's a lot of like darkness in this. George Clooney is also in this movie. I forgot about him. And there's a lot of like dark, shady things that happen, but it's one of those movies where like, that these things are happening in real life. And so it was just kind of eye-opening from that perspective. And just to kind of get a little bit more information on how the inner workings of like campaigns work was very interesting. Overall, it's very dry. It's very dramatic. Like, there's no comedy in this. It's very serious. But it was good. Like, it wasn't, honestly, I feel like even sitting here talking about it now, I think I liked this movie more than a 6 out of 10. I would probably say it was like a 7.5. But it's not something that I'm going to watch like consistently over and over again. I might watch it like a couple of other times, but it's not going to be something that like, oh, I have to watch this every year, or I have to watch this again like in a month. But yeah, we stumbled upon it, knew nothing about it, watched it, loved the cast, and I'm a big Ryan Gosling fan, so loved that. And yeah, it was just an very interesting movie with lots of like head turning moments, and the end is spellbinding. You don't really know how it ends, so we love a good twist ending. All right, next is Shazam. This is another movie that I was not expecting to like. I really thought this movie was going to be super dumb. And I ended up liking it way more than I thought. I know a lot of people out there don't like Zachary Levi. I know nothing about that drama. I don't know why people don't like him, but I think he does a good job in this role. The whole premise of Shazam is this young kid gets chosen to be a superhero, and he can like transform between being a high school kid and an adult, and he's like a 14-year-old boy stuck in this 40-year-old body trying to save the world and trying to do all these things, and he is in foster care, and I love that whole storyline of like these adoptive parents. It's just like there's so much to like about it. There's good humor, good comedy, and it has a really good storyline, and there are a lot of people in this movie too. And there was a sequel. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I gave this movie an 8 out of 10. I thought it was fun. This one definitely should not be green. This one definitely needs the yellow background. 5 out of 10, say anything. Now, when I watched this movie, I was on kind of a mission to watch all of these 80s movies that I hadn't previously seen. Say Anything was one of them. I had seen all the other classic John Hughes ones, and this one I don't even think is I don't even think John Hughes directed this one, but it kind of falls into that like Brat Pack movies. So you've got Pretty in Pink, you've got 16 Candles, you've got The Breakfast Club. Say Anything is almost always lumped in there. It's John Cusack. I think it's John Cusack's first movie. Joan Cusack is also in this movie. And then the girl, I think, was in Shag. She's in like a couple of other things from that time period. She looked familiar. I can't place her name. That's on me. But this is the one iconically he comes to her house holding the boombox. If you've seen Easy A, you know Emma Stone makes a reference to this movie. Another reason why I wanted to see it, because I absolutely love Easy A. But I gave it a 5 out of 10. It was just okay. I felt like there was a lot of buildup to this very big letdown. Like it just was meh. Like, eh. The one I watched with Sarah Jessica Parker where she like enters that dance competition was better. And I honestly don't even remember what that movie was called, but it was better than this one. It just didn't really do anything for me. It was just kind of like, eh. So honestly, it could probably have gotten a score of like a 4 or a 3. I think I was being a little bit generous with some of these ratings. Okay, the next one is a 3-for, because I previously, or I should say recently, finished watching the Psych series. And with the Psych series, there was a Psych the Musical episode, which I had to get Peacock for, because you can't watch it on any other streaming service. The rest of it was available on Amazon Prime, and it still is available on Amazon Prime, and I think you can get it on either Paramount or Peacock as well. So I had watched all of the series, wanted to see how the storyline of Sean and Gus and Jules kind of all culminated, and it culminates in 3 movie episodes. So they're just longer episodes, really. There's one kind of central storyline that is just kind of extended. So the first one you can see kind of has a Christmas theme. I gave the first one a 6 out of 10. I can't really tell you why without spoiling it. So if you've watched Psych, you feel like you have to watch the movie to kind of see how Sean and Jules and Gus all end up. It was just okay. I was like, this could have been put into an episode. I mean, it still has the classic Sean and Gus one-liners. My thing about the movies was they really hit the, come on, son, like a lot. Like almost, they kind of killed it almost. Like it just wasn't, it was really funny when Dule Hill used to say it in the earlier episodes, and then Sean kind of started saying it in the later episodes, and then they just kind of go back and forth, and it just kind of, that gag kind of dies in the movies. Now, I will say the second one, Lassie Come Home, I actually cried during that one. That one was very endearing. Very great performance from the actor who plays Lassiter, and Thomas something. I cannot remember his name. I should know it because I watched, however many episodes of this show. But it's very, very, very charming. And the second one, actually, I had to stop watching. I paused it and like had to come back to it because there's a point in which Sean and Juliet are having a conversation that really, really hit close to home for me. And I had to pause it and come back to it when I was in a little bit of a better headspace. But overall, I gave the second one an 8 out of 10. I felt it was endearing, charming, and really, really like gets to the emotional connection between these characters. And then the third one is mostly about Gus, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. But overall, like I said, the come on son gag, and it just, yeah, the third one that, like I said, is supposed to be about Gus. And I love Gus. He's my favorite character, but the third one also was like a 6 out of 10. So overall, these were all just okay, but I felt like I had to watch them because I wanted to fully say I finished the series. Inception. This is one of my brother's absolute favorite movies. He loves Christopher Nolan, and so does my husband. And so it was finally time for me to watch Inception. And I believe this is by Christopher Nolan. I'm going to be really mad if it's not, but I'm pretty sure it is. But if you know anything about Christopher Nolan or David Fincher, they're both very similar. And if it's not Christopher Nolan, this is David Fincher. But all of their movies are like these psychological thriller movies that kind of leave you on the edge of your seat, leave you guessing. This one is exactly that. And this is another movie that I liked more than I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to be really confused as to what was happening. And I was able to follow the storyline pretty well. It does have some very trippy out there parts to it, but as do all psychological thrillers. So you just kind of have to know what you're getting in for. And then the end does leave you guessing, and it was a great ending. I gave it an 8 out of 10 simply because I did get a little confused at some of the parts, and some of the idea of like realms and traveling, yes, I know it's sci-fi or like psychological thriller, but some of it is still just a little bit too out there for me. So that's why I didn't give it a higher score, but I did enjoy it more than I thought I was going to. All right, Runaway Bride. This one barely snuck in the yellow tier here. A 4 out of 10. I really, really enjoy Pretty Woman, and I thought that because it was Richard Gere and Julia Roberts again, that it would be like, oh, this is the sequel to Runaway Bride. Nope. Completely different movie, completely different characters, and completely different plot line. And it's supposed to be like kind of a romantic comedy, kind of a romantic drama. It just falls a little bit flat for me. The jokes are meh. It has a similar Pretty Woman storyline with Richard Gere kind of falling in love with Julia Roberts, not to spoil it, but you have to watch the movie to get their journey. And if you watch the movie, pay attention to the eggs. That's always the tip that I hear people say. So if you watch this movie, pay attention to the eggs. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with this movie. It just, I can't quote it, or I don't really remember that much of it. So that's why it just gets a 4 for me. Uptown Girls, this one is a little bit higher. This is another one that I started to watch, kind of put it away for a while and came back to it. Dakota Fanning is in this. She is super young, and pretty much the premise is this rich girl gets fired, cut off, something, loses all her money. She has to get a job, so she starts nannying. Dakota Fanning's the little girl that she's nannying for, and they live in New York City, so they have this she lives in this luxurious penthouse and all these things, and just kind of has all these toys and liberties, and it has a very charming storyline, and there is a beautiful connection that's formed between the two girls, and the nanny ends up really, really being fond of Dakota Fanning, and it's just a cute movie. Just fun. All right, Sing 2, I gave it a 7 out of 10, so just barely in the green tier, but I really enjoy these movies. This is, I think, the only animated movie other than robots that we've had so far. Matthew McConaughey plays the little koala guy. We've got Bono in this one. Scarlett Johansson is in this one. And essentially the premise of this is Matthew McConaughey gets called to the big leagues to direct this new show, and he's trying to get all of his ducks in a row. He brings all of his performers. It's fun. They're musical movies, so there's a lot of music in them. And the music is actually, like, the covers are very, very good. And it's just fun. It's a lot of fun. Very similar, I think, score to the first one. Like, neither one of them is, like, knock my socks off, best animated movie I've ever watched. But they're also very decently, like, I recommend them, and I say, oh, these are really cute movies. So they definitely hold their own. Oh, we've got another animated movie, Kung Fu Panda, the original. Are you shocked to know that this was the first time I ever watched Kung Fu Panda? It gets a 9 out of 10. This movie is funny, it's charming, and the little turtle guy I just absolutely love. I use some of his quotes in my Instagram captions. It's a, like, rags to riches story for Po the panda. His dad wants him to be a noodle server, a noodle chef, but all he wants to do is be a kung fu master. And it's like really cute. And again, like, I didn't want to like it, and then after I watched it, I liked it more than I thought. So it gets a 9 out of 10 for me. Again, like, not my favorite. It's not going to jump to, like, the top of the animated movie list for me, but it's definitely cute. And the sequels are on my list because I've never seen any of them. I'd never watched any of the Kung Fu Panda movies. Moving on. Again, this is kind of a Fast and Furious video. Like, we have a lot more to go, as you can see from my scroll bar over there. So and dinner has just arrived, so I'm trying to, like, quickly go through. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, starring Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. This movie is another one that's been on my list for a really long time, and it delivered. It's heartwarming, it's charming. Tom Hanks is good in pretty much everything that he does, and it really brought the beauty of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood to life. And I do think it does a really good job of showcasing Fred Rogers as a person and just, like, his values and his morals. But it also shed some light on kind of the darker side of Fred Rogers. Like, he wasn't home for his kids struggled. So there's, like, a lot of, like, really adult deep things. Like, Mr. Rogers put so much into providing this safe and honest space for kids, but he wasn't fully present with his wife and his kids. And it's just, as you grow up and, like, as we get older, these are all, like, super powerful messages. And I don't really know what it could have done to get that 10 out of 10 because it was so good and I enjoyed it so much. I just don't know if I can't watch it. It's not going to be a movie that I can watch over and over again. Or if I, like, wanted to be moved more than I was. And this was kind of a movie that I guess sadly just was kind of like, yeah, I was just very, like, in terms of and in grip with reality when I watched this movie. And I just think if it would have, like, moved me a little bit more, like if I would have been moved to tears or something, it might have gotten that 10 out of 10. Like, we're so close to the 10 out of 10 with this one. I do highly recommend. And this is another one that's based on an article. So the main character, other than Fred Rogers, the reporter, he was a real person and wrote a real article in Time magazine about Fred Rogers, and they had a beautiful friendship and relationship out of it. And it's just a very well done movie. And like I said, I don't know what it is about it that would have given it a 10, but it just, like, I feel very confident about that 9 out of 10, like, very, very good. But I do think A Man Called Otto is better. And I think that's kind of what I'm comparing it to. And if you want to see my review of A Man Called Otto, head over to my last movie review video because it is in there. The next one is our first red one. This is Source Code. I gave this a 2 out of 10. I honestly slept through the majority of this movie. I think I slept through over an hour and a half. I woke up to see how it ended. The ending was honestly disappointing because of how much Jake Gyllenhaal kind of goes through in the movie. And again, with this whole sci-fi thing, like, this is another, like, kind of psychological thriller movie. And we bought this movie. We found it really cheap. I think at either the Half Price Books warehouse sale or just at Half Price Books in general. And this was on a list of Watch Mojo's, like, best performances in a movie for this century. Jake Gyllenhaal was on there for this movie. And so we're like, oh, this must be really good. And it's a weird kind of out there movie. And it's there's some military stuff in it. There's sci-fi time travel-y stuff. And for me, it was just a little too out there. I give it a 2 out of 10. Like, for some people, this probably is like the best movie. And it's going to be one, it's like very underrated. But yeah, I like I said, I fell asleep and I had no interest in like going and watching it again. Another Jake Gyllenhaal film, The Zodiac. This one, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I feel like it might have gotten a higher score if it didn't take me so daggone long to watch it. This movie took me 3 settings, like 3 sit downs trying to watch it to get through. And it's only like 2.5 hours long. I watched Oppenheimer for Petey's sake. Like, I don't know what it was about it. I just could not, like, I kept falling asleep. I lost interest. I kept so for me, this gets a 6 out of 10, but this is one of Lucas's favorite movies. I think the case of the Zodiac Killer is interesting. Jake Gyllenhaal was also on that Watch Mojo Best Performances list for this movie, and specifically the scene in the basement. And if you're interested, you can watch Mojo's video about that. So you can just search it, or just search the scene. But it is like the Zodiac movie follows how the trying to catch the Zodiac Killer. And this is another movie that has a killer cast. We've got Jake Gyllenhaal, we've got Robert Downey Jr., we've got Mark Ruffalo as the 3 leading guys. And then there's a bunch of like people with smaller parts too. Like the guy who plays the presumed Zodiac, he has been in a bunch of movies also. So it's just, I don't know what it was about this movie that I didn't like, but it's just all right. It's just all right. Magic Mike's Last Dance. Now, before you all judge me, I want you to know that I have actually seen all 3 of the Magic Mike movies, and I actually weirdly enjoy them. The Magic Mike movies are really nostalgic to me. For one, the first one was the first rated R movie that I actually bought my own ticket to as a 17-year-old, which is a super big moment to be 17 and to buy your own movie ticket. And I was that person. I was a good girl, so I followed the rules and didn't go try and buy a rated R movie ticket before I was 17. But I also was one of those people who consistently, up until really recently, got carded every time I tried to go to a rated R movie and buy a ticket. So I had to be very careful. So when this movie came out in June of whatever year, when I finally was 17, what would that have been? That would have been, I guess, 2000, because let's see, 10 would have been 5, and then 12. So 2000 and I literally can't even think. I was 10 in 2005. So then 7 years after that, 2012, I think is what we maybe ish. That doesn't seem right. That does not seem right. What would it be? I was 17. Let's see, 1995. I would have been 15 in 2010. So yeah, 2012, I guess that would be right. Okay, that was way, you can tell I haven't judged in a while, guys, because that math took me way too long. But the second one is nowhere near as good as the first one. I highly recommend the first one, Channing Tatum. Magic Mike, for those of you who don't know, Magic Mike is actually loosely based on Channing Tatum's real life. He had no dance experience, and then from my research, he was a stripper and was never classically trained in dance, but was a stripper, was recruited to be in the Step Up movie because of his stripping. And his stripper name was Magic Mike. And so he does all of his own dancing in these movies, and he's never been classically trained. He was also in a Pink music video, which is a fun thing to watch if you're interested. And he's phenomenal. And of course he's sexy to boot. So the second one was not as good. And the first one has a terrible plot, but the dancing is phenomenal. And we're getting a similar thing here with the third one. But the third one, there was a better plot. My thing about this one, the reason why it did not get a 10 out of 10 is because of the language, and primarily it's Salma Hayek. I said this about her in the Hitman's Bodyguard video. Her language is just like, it's just unnecessary in my opinion, and that may make me a prude, but whatever. But Channing is amazing in this movie. His acting is great, but his dancing is even better. It's spot on. I watched this alone on a Friday night with a glass of wine. It was the best version of self-care. Ladies, you do not, I'm telling you, like, do this for yourself. 9 out of 10. And had the language not been as bad, it probably would have gotten a 10 out of 10. Honestly, this is just like a nice guilty pleasure movie. It's like the 50 Shades series. Like, some of us just love those movies because they're just like a guilty pleasure, like fantasy come to reality movie. And this was that for me. Moving on. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. We talked about Shazam earlier in the video, and this was the sequel. Just all right. I think, honestly, they should have stopped while they were ahead with the first one, but they gave a teaser for the third one, and this one was just okay. They tried to, like, pretty much they undid everything from the first one, tried to, like, add new characters in, and it just didn't work super well for me. But I do love, like, the adoptive family storyline that goes on through these movies, with the foster kids and the adoptive parents and their relationship and emotional connection. I just think is super heartwarming. It reminds me of the movie Instant Family, which is another one that I just absolutely love. So yeah, it lands in yellow tier, just okay. If you've watched the first one, you might give it a watch just because, but it's also, like, not something we rented it from the library just because, oh yeah, let's watch the second one type of a thing. Another yellow tier, Lightyear. This was a movie that I actually put off watching. I'm not even going to lie. I want to say boycott it, but not for the reasons that everybody thinks. I boycotted it because it did not go to the theater. It went straight to Disney Plus, or if it did go to the theater, it wasn't there for very long. You couldn't even go see it in the theater. And next thing you know, it was on Disney Plus, and it did get a lot of backlash, primarily because Tim Allen is not the voice of Buzz. It's Chris Evans, which to me just seems wrong to, like, recast a character so iconic as Buzz Lightyear. But also, my problem with this movie is they, like, I can't think of the word because I'm going to use the wrong word, but there's a word that is used in the video game and movie industry where they, like, completely undo things that have already been done. Retcon, maybe, is the word. And they just completely did that. Like, completely did that. Like, if you grew up watching the original Toy Story movies, which Toy Story has been around as long as I've been on this earth, you know that Zurg in the second movie tells Buzz that he is his father. You get the true answer to that in this movie. But also, like, I personally just feel like they were trying a little bit too hard with this movie. I don't feel like this movie needed to be made. And yeah, I mean, now I will say this does seem like a very harsh critique, but I enjoyed this movie more than I thought I would. I really thought I was not going to like this movie, and there were things that I liked about it. I really liked the cat, and I actually didn't hate Chris Evans. But the other thing that we were struggling with was some of the pieces of the movie. You would think that this movie would tie directly into the first Toy Story, and it really doesn't. Like, there were a lot of things that they had to really stretch. So yeah, I might be just cynical and critical because I don't love everything new that Disney's doing because I loved their classic formula. But yeah, I did like this more than I thought I was going to. So it did barely squeak into the yellow tier, but when I watched it, I thought it was going to be like a 1 or a 2. X-Men, the original, another movie that's been around for a while and I've just simply never seen. And it squeezed into yellow tier, 6 out of 10. Hugh Jackman's in this movie. James Marsden is in this movie. I think Ian McKellen is in this movie. Just a lot. Halle Berry is in this movie. Just a lot of people are in this movie. I think Anna Paquin is in this movie. Just, like, random people. And it's the original movie, so it's kind of like you don't really get any of their origin stories. It's just all of these mutants are coming together and they're joining for blah, blah, blah. And so, again, it was just okay. Not bad, not great, just okay. I feel like it was needed for me to understand the rest of them, which brings us to X2. We watched these like not too long ago, and we watched the first one on one night and we watched X2 the next night, so they were right back to back. The second one is a little bit more action than the first one. Second one has pretty much the same cast. They do bring in a few new characters. I really like the inclusion of the younger mutants and the kids in the second one, and they have some really cool powers. And I was telling Lucas, it reminds me of Sky High, and I absolutely love Sky High. So that was kind of what made this one like at the same. I think overall I enjoyed this one more. So this one probably should have gotten like a 7 and went into green tier, but we're just going to leave it a 6 because they both are kind of the same. The Fall Guy. This is one of the newer movies that this was just released to the theaters and we saw it over the weekend. And I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. Now I said earlier, I really, really enjoy Ryan Gosling. I think he's funny. I think he's genuinely good in anything that he does. And of course, he was great in Barbie. But I've loved him for a long time. I loved him in The Notebook. I loved him in Crazy Stupid Love. Obviously, I just talked about his performance in The Ides of March, which was also good. Obviously good in Barbie. And he's done a lot of other, like he did Drive. He did some other like lesser known movies. But he looks good. And this is a pretty intense movie in terms of action, and this whole movie is about stuntmen, and I think it's a great concept for a movie. I think drawing attention and appreciation to the stuntmen is a great idea, and also this movie had a lot of twists and turns, literally and figuratively, that kept us on the edge of our seats. We were laughing, there was some romance in it, like we really didn't know how to categorize this movie, but not in a bad way. I think it's definitely worth the watch. I think it got a 7 from IGN and a couple of other review sites. So, it was, and Lucas gave it a 7. So I liked it a little bit better than I thought I was going to, honestly, which is why I gave it the 8.5. There was nothing wrong with it. Like I said, it had comedy, it had drama, it had a little bit of romance, had some twists and turns. It just also had a lot of like those stereotypical action movie, like, you know, big fight scenes that are just kind of a little bit ridiculous and stuff like that. That kept it from getting like the 9s and 10s. The Sound of Freedom. Now, I gave this one a 9.5, but I put it in blue tier because this is a movie that I do feel like everybody should watch. And actually, at the end of the DVD, Jim Caviezel came on the screen. And for those of you who don't know, Jim Caviezel was in a very pivotal movie called The Passion of the Christ, and he actually played Jesus. So Jim Caviezel is very selective on the movies that he does. And he came on the screen, and the message was intended for theater audiences obviously. And he kind of just said, like, you need to tell everybody about this movie. And this movie is a very poignant and raw, vulnerable like depiction, and it is based on a true story about this man, Jim Caviezel, who went to Colombia and rescued like over 100 children out of sex trafficking like roles, I guess is what you could say. They were being kept in like these communes, kept in horrible conditions, and he saved them. And it's called The Sound of Freedom because they were singing songs and playing the drums, and that's the sound of freedom. And it's a movie that I don't think you could watch more than once because there are lots of it that is hard to watch, and it's hard to believe that things like this are happening to young children all over the world. And it said in the end credits that like the majority of the people supplying demand for such trafficking is America. So people in America are the reason that kids in third world countries are being stolen from their homes, sold into sex slavery. And that is very disappointing, disheartening. So this is just a very powerful movie that kind of, it takes a topic that nobody really wants to admit or talk about, and it put it on the big screen. And I think it was a very needed and necessary move. I gave it blue tier because I think it's something that everybody should watch. However, I did only give it a 9.5 out of a 10 for a score because, like I said, I don't know if I can watch it more than once. because there just were parts that were like just sad and really hard to watch. Okay, let's talk about this movie. We're gonna move on from Sound of Freedom. That one's kind of depressing. But in like, it was a great movie, but it also was, like I said, hard to watch. Okay, I've talked about Lightyear, and I said a minute ago that I haven't been super fond of a lot of the newer stuff that Disney has done. Wish is one of those. So I actually saw the trailer for Wish when I saw the remake of The Haunted Mansion, which I did do a review of. So if you're interested in my review of that, go check it out in my other videos. Right off the bat, I am not a fan of this style of animation, and I really hope Disney does not continue to use this style of animation. It is like they took 3D characters and put them on a 2D background, which maybe what they were trying to do, but it doesn't translate well to the screen, in my opinion. It makes it look unfinished. It makes it look just too like discombobulated for me. I don't know. I did not love it. But what I did not realize when watching it was that this was actually Disney's 100th anniversary film. So it's not the 100th film that Disney has done, but it is their 100th anniversary film. This film, I gave an 8 out of 10 with an asterisk because this movie got 2 extra bonus points just for the credits alone. So I highly recommend, if you are a Disney fan, like a true Disney fan, Disney adult who's seen almost every movie, loves Disney, loves the Disney parks, loves Disney content, like, watch this movie, and even if you don't watch the movie, just skip to the ending credits because they had me almost in tears. They were so beautiful, so well done, and it's such a nice tribute to everything that the studio has created. And with that being said, this is Disney's 100th anniversary film, so there are little tiny homages to almost all of their other movies in this movie. A Deer Named Bambi, Peter Pan makes an appearance, Maleficent makes an appearance, like, not explicitly, like you don't see Maleficent, but they're like, if you've seen those movies a lot and grew up with those movies, you'll recognize the animations that are happening. And I think that might be why the animation was so weird. They were literally reusing some of the animation. And I've kind of critiqued them in the past for doing stuff like that. I did that in my review of Moana. Like, it just, they have lots of talent in their studio, I know, and I feel like they just keep reusing kind of the same thing. But with that being said, this Wish is a great song. I love it. And Chris Pine plays Magnifico, and his songs are actually not terrible. So there were a lot of good things about this movie. I liked it way more than I was expecting to or hoping to. And like I said, it gets an 8 out of 10 with an asterisk because 2 points of that were the credits alone. So it really would have gotten like a 6. But I do think it has a lot of good things. All right, another 6 out of 10. Songbird. I'm not sure if this movie ever got a theatrical release. I couldn't really find any information. I want to say this movie was like being teased and trailered in 2021. It was supposed to be a like, what if COVID doesn't go away sort of a movie, and then COVID went away. And so I think people just, they knew it wasn't going to do very well. I don't know. Maybe it lost its budget, lost its funding. I'm not sure. I don't really know the story, but we were able to rent it from the library. And it was one that, again, like I had seen the trailer for it at that time. When I saw the trailer, like, I was still watching Riverdale, so I was pretty into KJ Apa, and I, knew Sophia Carson from The Descendants, and it was just okay. I wanted more out of this movie. Demi Moore is also in this movie, which was kind of random. I wanted more, and that's why I give it a 6. Like, I don't know. I wanted like more thrill, more drama. It almost was kind of predictable for it to be like a kind of sci-fi thriller. Like, it almost, and like, I know some of them are, but it was kind of just like, oh yeah. And maybe that was the point, but it just, yeah, I wanted more out of it. It was a 6 out of 10. Just And then we get to the last movie. Ironically, we started with a Planet of the Apes movie, and we're going to end this video with a Planet of the Apes movie. And this one is the new one, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. It's in green tier. We did our usual double feature. So we went and saw The Fall Guy and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I enjoyed Fall Guy more. And I came in more excited about this movie, which frequently happens to us. If you saw my review of Hypnotic and Fast X, you would know that. Again, in my other videos, you can check that out. My biggest complaint about this movie is that Caesar, it's no longer following Caesar. This is going to follow a whole new series of characters. And but I will say, I don't know if there's anywhere they can go from the ending of this movie. But I'm sure they'll find a way. I'm sure in the next few years we'll get Solace of the Planet of the Apes or Planet of the Apes Round 2. I don't know. Honestly, it was another sort of kind of retcon situation where we thought all the humans had died off and now all of a sudden there's humans again. Some of it just doesn't make any sense, and I don't like that it's following a new series of apes because I really got to like the apes in the previous 3. So that's why I give it a 7 out of 10. It was okay. There were parts of it that were really beautifully animated, and I think there were parts that are very fascinating. I like to watch the sign language between the apes, but overall, I liked War of the Planet of the Apes better, and I liked the original 3 better than the new one. Wow, that was a long video, guys. One of my longer movie reviews videos, but thank you all so much for hanging out with me. We've got a mix of older movies in here, newer movies in here, and regardless, let me know in the comments which movies you have seen, which ones are your favorite, and let me know what you want me to watch and review next. I always love watching new movies, and I already have a list of 5 or 6 more that will go in the next review video. So until then, I will see you guys next time, and keep it here on my channel for all things movies, books, and of course, Swiftie content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.